On a cool August morning in Wyoming, a solo hiker named Lydia Monroe stepped onto a remote trail in Yellowstone, sending her sister a quick photo and promising to check in that evening. She never did. Rangers acted fast. Helicopters searched overhead. Dogs combed the paths, drones scanned tree canopies and creek beds, but not a single trace was found. Her scent trail ended in an empty clearing. Her gear never turned up. Her case quietly faded into winter. But then, 6 months later, 2 hunters scouting early elk movement along a ridge stumbled onto a collapsed den, a shallow cave tucked beneath thawing snow. Inside, they found something horrifying: Lydia's backpack, her waterlogged journal, and claw marks carved so high into the walls they defied explanation. What disturbed investigators most wasn't what they found, it was what they didn't. Lydia Monroe was 26, a recent graduate in environmental science, an experienced solo backpacker, careful, detail-oriented. She logged her routes, filed permits, and checked in religiously. This wasn't her first time in the wilderness. She'd planned a 5-day solo loop through Yellowstone's quieter southern trails, a route designed to avoid crowded lookouts and tourist congestion. It was a last breath of solitude before fall. She wanted to be where the noise couldn't reach her. The photo she sent her sister was casual. Lydia standing beside a wooden trail marker, one strap of her pack slung loose, hair tied back in a scarf. Behind her, a path disappears into the trees. There's nothing eerie in the frame, nothing ominous. Just a young woman doing what she's done dozens of times before. April, her sister, never got the second text, the one Lydia said she'd send when she reached camp the next morning. She called the ranger station. That afternoon, the search began. At first, everything followed procedure. The rangers located her parked car at the south entrance. They matched her permit to the intended route. The dogs followed her scent easily, straight along the trail, then down an offshoot toward a low ridge. It ended in a narrow glade, a natural clearing where the sun broke through for the first time in hours. And then it just stopped. The scent, the trail, all of it. No footprints in the soft moss, no gear, no sign of distress or confusion. Nothing broken, nothing left behind. It was as if she'd walked into the clearing and vanished. They kept going for days. Then, weeks. The dogs circled the glade again and again, each time with growing agitation. Nothing new was found. Even aerial infrared picked up no unusual signatures. The forest was still as the first snow arrived. Search operations scaled back. The official record grew quiet. April, didn't she started posting online old trail photos, gear lists, maps. She emailed environmental researchers, called backcountry guides, joined forums. There were whispers not about Lydia specifically, but about that part of the park, places the rangers didn't like to talk about. A ridge where compasses stopped working, clearing that felt ... off. A thing seen once, deep in the trees, by a field surveyor who quit the next day and never came back. Most of it was noise, until it wasn't in March. A pair of hunters were tracking elk movement along the same southern ridge when they came across a shallow den exposed by melt. They weren't deep in, only a few miles from the edge of the trail system. The cave was narrow, low to the ground, and filled with old pine debris and soft thawing soil. Inside, lit by what little light filtered in, they saw a pack. Red buckled. Propped up against the back wall, they thought they'd found a winter bear den. What they found instead forced them back into the snow without another word. There was no body, no bones, no bear. Just Lydia's pack. Her boot, a broken aluminum hiking stick. Claw marks, 5-pronged vertical, and spaced 5 feet off. The ground, too high for any known bear behavior, too sharp to be from age or erosion, and too fresh. The rangers returned with investigators. What struck them first was how clean everything was. The pack was free of mold. The food inside was sealed and dry. No insect damage, no rodent holes, no rot, as if it had been placed there yesterday. Lydia's field journal was water damaged but salvageable. Pages were smeared, some unreadable. Most were ordinary notes: elevation, flora, hand-drawn sketches of tree bark and animal tracks, but near the back something shifted. Page bore faint lines written in haste. A graphite scrawl across the margin. Tunneled deeper than expected, no breeze. Another, scratching again. Sounds like it's above me. The last page, the one that made the lead investigator stop cold. This isn't a bear den. They found no other evidence. No drag marks, no bedding, no tracks in or out. They tested the claw marks. Fresh clay beneath the grooves, not old, 6 months old. The only possible conclusion was one no one wanted to say out loud, whatever placed. Lydia's pack inside that cave didn't do it last summer. It did it recently. The forest had given something back, but not her. The forest doesn't change much in 6 months. That's what struck April Monroe as she stepped from the ranger vehicle onto the trailhead where her sister's hike began. Same trees. Same dirt lot. Same trail markers still darkened from last week's thaw. Nothing felt older. Nothing felt disturbed. Not like it should have. She hadn't planned to come back. In truth, she hadn't planned anything at all after they found the pack. It felt like a cruel final chapter, to find Lydia's things so eerily preserved, so strangely placed, and yet not her. The gear felt staged, posed, a setup without an audience. Something no predator would ever bother with. And then a stranger contacted her. Not through the forums, not Reddit, not social media. Mail, a manila envelope, unmarked, folded twice, and sealed with packing tape. No return address. Inside, a printout of an old GPS breadcrumb trail. Wasn't Lydia's official route, not the one filed with the Rangers. But the marker at the top labeled it clearly. Lydia_device_export_082824, a GPS extraction, timestamped hours after her last text. At first glance, the route followed her planned path. But then it deviated. Not west toward the campsite she intended, but east, toward a ridgeline that wasn't on any public trail. Then it cut again, hard south, then zigzagged and stuttering. Loops before ending near the exact bluff where the den had been found. April checked the public file. That data wasn't there. The park had never mentioned a deviation. The Rangers had told her Lydia's device was never recovered. No digital trail, no pings, no way to know where she'd gone. So how did someone else get this? She brought it to the park office. The ranger on duty, a younger guy, newer, looked uncomfortable almost immediately. He said he'd never seen it, asked to make a copy, and disappeared into a back office and didn't return for 20 minutes. When he finally did, told her someone would be in touch. No one called, so she came back on her own. She'd brought one person with her, not a search party, not a rescue dog, just a camera operator named Tyler she'd met online. He ran a small backcountry YouTube channel, mostly survival myth-busting and gear reviews. But a few of his videos had gone viral, especially one about the Maroon Bells hiker who vanished and was later found wedged between 2 unmapped boulders, with no broken bones. Tyler didn't ask questions, didn't try to pitch it as content. He just drove 12 hours overnight, met her at the motel, and kept his camera down until she gave permission. They were already halfway. Up the ridge when she first noticed the sound, not a snap, not an echo, just absence. The trees felt wrong here. Not thinner, not even especially tall, but silent. No wind, no bird song. Not even the insect clicks that should have emerged with the thaw. Even the ground felt less like forest floor and more like carpeted dust, soft, unsteady. She stopped where the GPS trail ended, or at least where the final breadcrumb dropped off. The bluff was still scorched on one side from a lightning fire 3 years ago. You could see charred stumps poking through the snowmelt. The den itself was gone now, sealed by rangers, according to the report. But the ground still bore signs. A depression in the earth, a disturbed ring of lighter soil. Small rocks reset into unnatural order. She crouched beside the spot, breathing through her mouth. "I want to record something," she said. Tyler raised the camera. She read from her notes, the journal lines, the GPS trail. Then she held up the printout. But as she started talking about the claw marks, Tyler turned the camera toward the ridge. "Did you hear that?" She hadn't. But when he played it back, Later that night in the motel, slow motion, amplified, there was something behind her voice. Not static, not wind. A slow scrape. Metal against clay. They didn't sleep that night. 3 days later, she got a call. Blocked number. The voice on the other end didn't identify himself. He asked her one question. Did the GPS file you? Got still include the missing time stamp at 1847. April didn't answer. The call disconnected. That same night, someone uploaded a clip to the same channel Tyler used for his hiking content. It only stayed up for an hour before being removed. Not flagged, not copyright claimed, just gone. But people saw it. It showed. The same ridge April had visited, only taken from above. Drone footage, shaky, low to the trees. Likely old. But what caught everyone's attention was the single frame at the 5-minute mark. A pause in the sweep. A flicker of something at the edge of the den's sight. It wasn't a figure. Not clearly. More like distortion, as if the air itself had warped for a moment. Bent, like heat off asphalt. But wrong for the temperature. Wrong for the light. And then it was gone. The clip never reappeared. No mirrors. No reposts. The account vanished a few hours later. When April asked Tyler if he'd ever seen that kind of visual effect before, he didn't answer. But that night, he called her from his room down the hall. "I don't want to be on this anymore," he said quietly. "Why?" "I went through the raw audio. From the ridge, and..." He paused. "I think someone's breathing in it. Not me. Not you." There were no other people on the trail. She told them she needed time, that she was flying home soon. But each night she sat by the window of her motel room. Watching headlights disappear into the forest roads beyond the tree line, she knew she wouldn't leave yet. Not until she understood what her sister had seen in those final hours. Not until the image of that red packed clean, impossible, stopped replaying behind her eyes. The calls started that week. Never during the day. Always late after midnight. Blocked number. No one spoke. Not breathing, not rustling, just a hollow silence like an open line held in a concrete stairwell. On the third night, she answered and left the phone on her nightstand. 10 minutes in, just before the line cut out, she swore she heard her name. She never got it on tape. The ranger who finally agreed to meet her did so. Under conditions, no recordings, no questions about his name, no mention of his involvement. In the Monroe case, they met at the back of an old gas station, half an hour from the park's southern border. He was older than she expected. Not retired, but close. Wore his park-issued coat inside out. He didn't shake her hand. The first thing he asked was if she'd seen the original report, the one filed in the week before the pack was found. She told him yes. He shook his head once. "No," he said. "You saw the one they gave to the press." Then he pulled a folded map from his coat. It wasn't a topographic overlay, not official, photocopied, sun-bleached in places. The date stamped in the corner read 1986. He pointed to the southern quadrant. Just above where Lydia's trail ended. There used to be a path here. A cut path service access. Decades old. Never marked for hikers. Fire. Why? It didn't lead anywhere good. She didn't ask what that meant. She just stared at the area, a narrow curve along a bend in the ridge. Descending into a dry basin that didn't appear on any modern trail app. Then he asked the question she'd been avoiding. Did she leave a voicemail? April froze. She hadn't told anyone that. It's not online. Not to rangers. Not even to Tyler. Lydia had never left voicemails. Ever, she texted. She used voice memos sometimes. Never voicemails. But when? April reactivated her old number a few days after her disappearance. One message appeared, time-stamped the evening Lydia vanished. It had no audio, 30-6 seconds of silence. She played it dozens of times, hoping for background noise, footsteps, wind, breathing nothing. She uploaded it once to a cloud folder. 3 days later, the file corrupted. When she told the ranger that, he nodded like he already knew. She wasn't supposed to call. he said quietly. That area doesn't have coverage. But it came through. He gave her a strange look. Yeah, that's worse. Back at the motel, she laid the map out under the yellow desk lamp. The lines were faint, but visible, trails that hadn't been maintained in decades. One cut west from the main loop, then forked toward the slope where Lydia's scent trail had ended. She traced the route with her thumb, stopping at the edge of the basin. The forest there was denser, colder, not in terms of climate, but in every account April could find. There were scattered notes from the 70s and 80s, logging crews reporting hearing footsteps after dark, compass needles spinning, radios going dead for hours. Most dismissed it as myth. Tall tales, but there were. Things that didn't fit even the park's own internal logic. Geological surveys that stopped mid-report. A sinkhole cataloged in 1994, then reclassified as non-hazardous terrain with no follow-up data. One ranger's suicide quietly filed. One researcher who left a handwritten note in a sidebar of her vegetation study. There's something. Under the soil line. A space, maybe. But I'm not allowed to test. April didn't sleep that night. She sat with her laptop open, the headphones on, listening to the silent voicemail again. Except, it wasn't silent, not entirely, somewhere around the 23-second mark. When she filtered out all ambient noise, a faint click registered, then another, and then something that made her stomach tighten. Not a word, not a breath, but a low, rhythmic sound. Wet, muffled, like something dragging through dirt. She played it again and again. The next morning, the motel power went out. For exactly 3 minutes, when it returned, her laptop had shut itself off and restarted in safe mode. Her voicemail file was gone. She met with Tyler again 2 days later. He looked pale, shaken. He hadn't posted anything, hadn't edited the ridge footage, but he'd been digging, not in the trail reports. In Ranger personnel files, the man who filed Lydia's case. The one who led the recovery effort when the den was discovered had done this once before. 19 years ago? Different park, different hiker, same pattern, solo traveler, logged route, disappeared mid-hike, no signs of struggle. 6 months later, a sudden discovery, gear intact. No remains. That report had been buried, but one phrase was listed at the bottom of a weather-damaged incident log, barely legible in faded red ink. Resealed. Returned. They waited until the weather cleared. Even in March, the southern ridge held snow in the deeper tree wells. Light fell slowly through the lodge poles that morning, silver, cold, still. The kind of light that doesn't bring warmth, just visibility. April stood near the tree line with Tyler beside her, map folded in her gloved hand, his backpack heavier than before. Not with food or shelter, just gear, batteries, audio recorders. A backup hard drive wrapped in a wool sock, she hadn't told. Anyone they were going? Not her parents, not the forums, not even the ranger who'd passed her that map. She didn't want interference. She didn't want permission. What they were looking for didn't require approval, it required silence. The map took them east off the trail, just past where Lydia's GPS breadcrumb had flickered and stopped. No markers, no switchbacks, just raw slope, soft earth underfoot. After 2 hours of uphill scramble, they reached the curve in the ridge, a natural saddle between two boulders, one of which had fractured in a spiral as if cracked from the inside. April paused there. She didn't know why at first. Then she realized what was missing. The forest sounded different. No birds, no wind in the needles, even Tyler's breath seemed absorbed by the air. Like sound didn't echo here. It just ended. She scanned the ridgeline, then dropped to a crouch and brushed her glove along the dirt near the broken stone. There, half covered by leaves and ice. A vent, crevice, narrow, deep. You wouldn't notice it unless you were looking. I think this is it, she said quietly. Tyler leaned down beside her. He didn't speak. The opening wasn't wide. It's just enough to lower themselves, feet first, into the slope. The air immediately changed colder, yes, but dry. Why? Too dry for? A cave formed by snowmelt? The walls weren't smooth limestone. They weren't stone at all, clay. Hardened and carved. Not naturally. The deeper they went, the narrower the path. They moved without speaking, Tyler behind her, one small lead clipped to her shoulder strap. Shadows didn't shift like they should. There were no echoes, only footsteps, and beneath them, a kind of delay. Like they were walking above something hollow. She felt it first. A subtle static on her skin, like standing near an old tube TV turned to a dead channel. Then she stopped, reached forward. Her hand touched metal, embedded in the wall, flush with the clay. A box, small, matte black, about the size of a paperback novel. A single lead no bigger than a pin, glowing faint green dot. It wasn't buried. It had been placed. Tyler crouched beside her and pulled off his pack. "You recording?" He nodded. They didn't speak as he worked the casing open. No rust, no water damage. He turned the device slowly, revealing a switch on the underside and a tiny speaker port on the face. He didn't flip the switch. He didn't need to, because it was already on. Still running, still recording, still warm. They didn't remove it. Didn't know what would happen if they did. Instead, they slipped in a fresh SD card from Tyler's equipment, backed the files up in triplicate, and left the recorder in place exactly as they'd found it. They didn't descend further.
Not yet.
The space narrowed into a deeper crawl. Beyond the device, and April wasn't ready to go in blind, they hiked out before dusk, cold and silent. Only when they returned to the motel did Tyler plug the card into his reader. There were dozens of files, short ones, most 10 to 20 seconds, long always recorded in the early hours. They began 6 months ago, the day after Lydia disappeared. Each was a snippet of quiet, but every fifth or sixth one, there was a sound, dragging, shuffling, breathing, not human one. File timestamped mid-January had something different. A voice weak, barely above a whisper. Just 6 words, spoken with effort and echoing as if into the mouth of an impossible room. "Is anyone still out there?" They played it again. Again it was Lydia's voice. April didn't cry. Not. At first, she just sat with her fists pressed to her mouth, legs shaking beneath her as the file played over and over. Tyler didn't speak. He didn't film. The room was too quiet to justify anything louder than breathing. Later that night, she went back and scrubbed through the metadata, checked every timestamp. The recorder had never powered off its battery. Should have died after a month. 2 max. But it had kept going. File after file, sound after sound, always after midnight. It's always under the ridge, always alone, but not quiet. The last file, recorded the night before they found it, was shorter than the rest. Just 5 seconds, no voice. No dragging, only one. Soon, knock 3 sharp raps. Then silence. And faint static that didn't stop until the file ended, as if something knew it was being heard, or had just heard them. The phrase didn't come from Reddit. It's not a podcast, not a hiker's forum. It was handwritten in faded blue ink. Across the front of a manila envelope inside the University of Colorado's Department of Earth Sciences archive, echo cavity. Not natural formation, field notes, G.F. Thompson, Yellowstone Ridge Survey. 1987 decommissioned. April turned the envelope over slowly. No catalog number. No barcode. A physical file that wasn't digitally indexed. She found it only after spending 6 hours sifting through unlabeled shelves in the off-site records basement. Following a faint trail left by an old geology grad, a student who replied to her email with a single line, "If you're looking into that ridge, check the defunded cave work from the 80s. Thompson was the lead." Then he wasn't. She'd never heard of Thompson. He wasn't listed in any Yellowstone publications or government surveys. But his name appeared twice in handwritten meeting logs, once in 1986, once in 1987. In the margins of an internal document from the U.S. Geological Survey, next to both entries was the same stamp, Suspended hazard risk UNDFINSIE. Opened the envelope on a university copier. Inside, 10 pages. Torn graph paper, faded photos. A single hand-drawn map. And 2 notes that shifted the tone of everything that came before. The first was dated June 1987. There is an acoustic property to the interior walls that behaves abnormally. Echo delays are longer than the space allows. A knock takes approximately 2.8 seconds to return, but the cavity is no larger than 40 meters at any point. No explanation found. And then, at the bottom, a rushed addition. Yesterday, we knocked twice. Something knocked back. She stayed in Boulder 2 more days. There were no further mentions of the echo cavity in public records. Thompson didn't publish after 1989. His university page had been removed. The last trace was a brief citation in a thesis proposal about subglacial voids marked retracted. She tried emailing 2 colleagues listed as co-authors. One author replied, retired, no forwarding address. The other, email bounced. Server not found. Back in Yellowstone, she didn't go straight to the motel. She drove to the post office, rented a P.O. box under a false name. No explanation, just instinct. That night, she received a single file from an unlisted email. No subject. Line, no text, just a WAV file titled echo_response_cleaned, WAV-. The knock pattern was unmistakable. 3 knocks, pause, then 3 back, but on the cleaned file, something new emerged. Faint, dragged upward from the low end of the spectrum. A frequency that shouldn't carry voice, yet did. A distorted whisper. Not a word, exactly. Not English, but patterned, tensional. April didn't know how to describe it, so she didn't. Not to Tyler, not to her parents. She just wrote it down phonetically as best she could. Atanu, Atanu, Atanu. When she said it aloud in her motel bathroom, the mirror behind her cracked at the corner. No force, no impact, just a quiet hairline fracture that hadn't been there the night before. She didn't say it again. Tyler hadn't spoken much since the recorder find. He stayed busy. Backed up drives, changed hotel rooms twice, kept the raw files offline. He didn't want to talk about what he thought the space beneath the ridge actually was. But when she mentioned the phrase "not a natural formation," he nodded slowly. It's like he'd already known. Then he pulled out a screenshot from the ridge drone footage, one taken days earlier, when they'd passed the site on their second trip. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary capture. A bird's-eye view of the slope. Snowline receding, trees still bare, but near the base of the ridge, beneath a shadow that hadn't been there before. Something stood in partial relief. Not a figure, not a shape, a negative space. A section of earth too perfectly vertical, too clean. Yes! As if something had opened. They both stared at it for a long time before April finally spoke. Would you go back in? Tyler didn't answer right away. He just turned his laptop toward her and played a second audio file, one she hadn't heard yet. This one didn't contain knocks. No breathing, no dragging. It was Lydia's voice, short, clipped, but not scared. Resolved, if you're hearing this, I waited too long. Tell them I didn't fall. I didn't get lost. I heard it, and I followed. Then static. Then a metallic click. They returned the next day. It's just the 2 of them. No permits. No GPS sharing. April didn't bring her sister's photo this time. She didn't need a reason anymore. The entrance was wider now. Something had shifted, collapsed deeper, perhaps, but the space had grown. Inside, the air felt warmer than it should have. Not muggy, not alive, but circulated deeper in, past where the recorder had been left. The walls narrowed into a soft bend like a throat. They moved carefully. Lights low. The clay beneath their boots gave slightly as if hollow. Then Tyler stopped walking. He raised. His hand pointed there. Embedded at shoulder height in the wall was a glint of silver, half covered in dirt. Small, square, familiar. April wiped the surface clean with her glove. It was a second recorder, still. still warm and blinking red. The second recorder wasn't like the first. Slightly newer, the different casing. Shinier, a small sticker half scraped off. No markings to indicate ownership. No serial number. It's the kind of tool used by professionals who don't want questions. It had been embedded with care, not dropped, not wedged, set at eye level, flush with the clay wall, as if someone had marked that exact spot ahead of time. Tyler didn't touch the file system immediately. Checked the temperature first. The casing was warm again. The LED blinked steadily, not flashing. And when he finally did connect it to a battery-backed reader, the screen lit up with a list of audio files. Rec_2024_08_29_0119, Rec_2024_08_30_2024_2024_31_302, ... and dozens more. 37 files in total, all recorded between Lydia's disappearance and early October, each one time-stamped between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. HL, all marked active record, not scheduled capture. Someone had pressed record someone down here with her. They moved farther in before they listened. The tunnel bent again, curling slightly to the left. Not like a mine shaft. It's not carved by hand, but eroded with intention, as if it followed something older. The air was thin but breathable, no mold. Rock scent. Just dry clay and the faintest scent of ashdot. April stopped when she saw the wall. It was smooth, not worn smooth, machined, or melted. It curved upward into a low, concave chamber. The shape was unnatural in the way symmetry in nature always feels uncanny, like the inside of a bell or a rib cage. And on that far wall, just above head height, something had been written in charcoal. Not a name, not a sentence, just 5 words, cramped and precise, drawn as if on instinct. I made it to here. Lydia. Handwriting was Lydia's. There was no question. April had seen her sister's field journals since high school. The angular tilt of the R, the disconnected cross on the T, she stared at it for a long time, her breath fogging lightly in the headlamp beam, then reached out and ran her finger just below the text. The wall was cold, but dry, like the message. Had been written the night before. Tyler played the first audio file inside the chamber. It was mostly silence. Then a shift, a whisper, same phrase repeated again, 4 times, not Lydia's voice. Male, low, calm. They're still above me. They're still above me. They're still above me. They don't look down. The second file was worse. Wet breathing. Something scraping not for motion, but like a body against fabric, followed by a single thump, then another voice. Lydia's quiet, wavering. If someone finds this, I think it's listening to me breathe. Then, static. They backed out of the cavity slowly. No rush. No panic. Just the slow understanding that whatever had happened down here hadn't stopped when Lydia disappeared. It had continued, changed shape. Left signs, they marked the wall, not with charcoal. With tape, a single line, bright orange, cut from Tyler's. Backup roll and pressed to the edge of the chamber entrance. When they turned back to look from 5 feet away, the tape was nearly invisible. That was the part that disturbed them most. How easily the tunnel swallowed everything outside. The world hadn't changed. The ridge still sloped down in a soft windbreak of deadfall and brush. The snow line was higher now, no boot prints visible. They hadn't seen another person in hours. Back at the motel, they transferred the files in. Silence. April didn't cry, but her hands shook because file 19, recorded on September 17th, didn't just contain Lydia's voice. It contained her laugh, faint off camera, not staged, not scared. It's just a single short breath of genuine laughter. Then, like she realized it had slipped out, her voice again. No, you don't get that. A pause. Then, you don't get that from me. As if she was talking to something, not someone. The laughter didn't make April feel relief. It made her feel sick. Lydia didn't laugh when she was afraid. She only did that when she thought the worst part was over, and it never was. Later that night, Tyler called her from his room. "You need to hear this," he said. It was from File 34, a shorter clip. The usual static, then a shuffle, then something that sounded like whispering from two sources, one human, one not. Then near the end, Lydia again, "Tell them it's still open. They closed the wrong one." April leaned forward slowly. "The wrong what?" she whispered. Tyler didn't answer. But outside the motel, across the dark parking lot where wind moved through empty garbage bins, April thought she saw something shift in the tree line just for a moment. A change in shadow, like something pulling back or watching. April didn't tell Tyler she was going back. She left before dawn, packed light, no drone, no recorder, just headlamps, a flashlight or phone. And one thing she hadn't taken before, Lydia's hiking scarf, faded yellow cotton, knotted in the corner. It still smelled faintly like cedar and dust. The scarf wasn't for sentiment. It was a marker, a tether. She tied it to a branch at the trail's edge before disappearing. Back into the woods, she needed to do this part alone. Not because she was brave, but because she didn't know what it would let her see. If someone else was watching. The ridge felt different in the morning frost. Brighter, but not warm. The air had a pressure to it now, not altitude, not wind, just density. Like walking through a place that didn't want noise or memory. The clay at the entrance was dry, cracked, more so than before. The opening hadn't shifted since she and Tyler had found the second recorder. But as she lowered herself in this time, something struck her for the first time. The inside of the passage smelled faintly sterile, not decay, not rot. Clean, too clean for a cave system untouched by human hands. She passed the marked chamber. The tape still faintly visible in the side of her headlamp beam. The handwriting Lydia had left was still there. "I made it to here," but this time, April noticed something new. A second mark, to the right of Lydia's message, fainter, like someone had scraped lightly into the wall with a blunt tool or fingernail, an arrow. Pointing down, she followed the bend. The slope descended more steeply now. It was no longer a crawl space. The tunnel opened wider, just enough to walk with a stoop, leading into what looked like a runoff gully carved by time. But the symmetry stayed unnatural. Even as the surface roughened, the walls retained their arc. Not jagged, not weathered, just formed. She checked her GPS. It blinked, then went red. Signal lost. Expected. Still. The screen showed her last known point in a line that should have ended 50 feet ago, but it didn't. It kept drawing as if her phone knew the way before she did. The chamber came without warning. She turned a corner. There it was, wide, sunken, ringed with old stone that hadn't seen sunlight in a century. A perfect circle, 30 feet across. The floor was packed dirt and crushed rock. No leaves, no debris. A place that didn't invite intrusion, but it clearly received it. And on the far wall, a hatch. Metal, industrial, bolted flush with the ground. Covered in faint moss at the corners, but otherwise intact. Built with intent? It wasn't Park Service standard. No identification, no latch, no serial. And it wasn't old either. It was too clean. It was too deliberate, like someone had put it there. To keep something in, not out. April circled it once. Her boots left faint impressions in the packed soil. Only hers. No other footprints. She knelt beside it, ran her hand along the edge. It was cold, not frozen, refrigerated. Like the kind of chill metal holds when it's been sitting underground, sealed, powered. There was no visible keyhole, no keypad, just a circular indent at the center, like a pressure panel. She didn't touch it, not yet. Instead, she set down her pack, pulled out the last thing she'd brought. A backup recorder voice activated. She pressed it once, spoke clearly. March 12th. Approx. 11:24 a.m. metal hatch located beneath ridge chamber. No signs of animal nesting, no signs of decay. Possibly connected to early expedition structures, but no public documentation. No ranger markings, no utilities.
She waited, no sounds.
No response. Just her own voice fading into the low hiss of air. Then she did something she didn't plan to. She knocked 3 short raps on the hatch with the back of her knuckles. Waited nothing. She knocked again, longer, louder, still nothing. And then, as she reached for the recorder to shut it off, the sound changed. Not above. Not beside, below. A soft metallic click, like pressure equalizing, followed by a faint hiss. She stepped back, holding her breath. The hatch didn't open, but she saw it.
Out.
At the edges. Just for a second, condensation. The seal wasn't airtight anymore. Something had moved behind it. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She stood still until the air went dry again, till the metal stopped whispering. Until the recorder in her pocket stopped picking up anything but her own breathing. Then she left the scarf. She tied it gently to a rusted ring near the edge of the hatch. One knot tight for Lydia. For her. For anyone who might follow. And then she climbed out of the ridge that night back at the motel. She checked the recorder. The last 5 minutes were blank. But just before that, layered beneath her second set of knocks, one whisper bled through the static. Not from her. Not from above, from beneath. You're not first. April didn't speak to anyone for 2 days after finding the hatch. Not Tyler. Not her parents. Not the ranger who'd passed her the first map. She didn't know what she would even say. There was no language left for the thing she was now. Seeing no phrasing that didn't sound insane. Instead, she went back to the records quietly. Alone. She didn't search Lydia's name. No, she didn't search anything newer than 1990. Instead, she looked for phrases. Buried terms she remembered. From old documents. Hazard risk undefined. Echo delay. Survey void. She found the connection on page 14 of a declassified Army Corps of Engineers memo from 1974, typed in the margin. Beside a note about geological anomalies beneath designated sections of Yellowstone's southern corridor was a hand-drawn star and one word, UNSOI, and diance to it. Coordinates. April checked them. They didn't match any trail, not even the off-map ones. But when she overlaid them on her own GPS trace, the one showing Lydia's last movement, the one they'd been warned wasn't real, aligned exactly not to the hatch, to the path before it. The route Lydia followed. The zigzags, the sudden, hard southward turn, wasn't a random detour. It was a survey line, 1972 military grid, now erased from all current maps. The whistleblower came by email, a burner account. No name, just one sentence. I worked Southern maintenance. Have the scans. I'll meet you. Bring nothing. Met him in a rest stop 30 miles south of the park. He didn't get out of the truck. I just rolled the window down and passed. A folder through the gap. Manila worn, held shut with electrical tape. No labels. He didn't wait for questions. It just said. She didn't find it. It found her. April didn't open the folder until she got back to her room. Inside were high-resolution scans of hand-drawn park schematics, most dated between 1969 and 1975, none marked with trail names, just depth measurements. Shaded zones. Pressure maps. In the center of one, a shaded black circle, large, uneven. 150 feet below surface, labeled by hand in red pencil. Subcavity 3. Resonance zone unstable beside it. 2 more words, scribbled smaller. Not geologic. April stared at them for a long time. She knew what this was. Not a fault line, not an old lava tube, not a bear den, not a natural formation. The government had surveyed this place, not once, not twice. They'd mapped it, measured it, then buried. The hatch she found wasn't the anomaly. It was maintenance access. She called Tyler, told him everything. He didn't sound surprised. Just tired, like he'd already felt it closing in. There's something else, he said. He'd been scrubbing footage from their last trip frame by frame, comparing shadows in the cave chamber. measuring angles against Lydia's last known recordings on the second-to-last file, right before Lydia's breathless laugh. He'd caught something most people wouldn't notice, a flicker. Light where there shouldn't have been light, just for 2 frames. Not from her. Hamp. Like a machine turning on. April didn't sleep that night. She opened her laptop, watched the raw footage again. She synced Lydia's old GPS trace, the one someone mailed her with the army coordinates. They matched. Down to the meter, but Lydia hadn't followed the line all the way. She stopped just short. The hatch wasn't at the end of the path. There was another marker, one more point, deeper south, buried further down. Marked in red ink on the oldest of the maps, LZ3, then beneath it, sealed 871sts, do not return, no hatch. No maintenance code, just 2 handwritten notes, siren patterns detected, shortwave signal inside never recorded. And, in faint pencil, no echo, no return. She printed the map, marked it, folded it once, then packed her. Not for closure, not even for answers, because she was beginning to understand something. Lydia had understood too late. This place didn't. Just let her in. It had been waiting. April didn't ask Tyler to come. Showed up anyway. Just after sunrise, his truck idling in the motel lot, thermos in hand. He didn't say much, just nodded toward her gear and motioned for her to get in. No words like last trip or closure. They both knew better than that now. They drove north in silence, through the low valley, past the fire-scarred ridges and snow-melt creeks, past the ranger checkpoint that had been unmanned for weeks. Something in the park had shifted since March. Not weather, not wildlife. Presence like it had stopped pretending it didn't know they were there. The climb to the ridge was slower this time, the air thinner, the trail oddly clearer, as if something had passed through recently. Flattening brush, dislodging stone. The entrance to the passage was just as they'd left it. Dry, undisturbed, but 50 feet in. Old chamber. April saw it. The scarf. Lydia's faded yellow cotton hiking scarf, the one she'd tied to the hatch, ring days ago, was gone, not shredded. Not dropped, gone, and beyond it, the hatch was open. Not fully, just a tilt, enough to show a sliver of depth beyond. The air rising from it wasn't cold anymore. It was warm, like exhale. April knelt by the hatch, touched the metal. No frost, no moisture, no resistance. It had been opened from the inside. She glanced at Tyler. He didn't move. Just switched on his light and adjusted the second. Strap on his pack. She didn't ask if he was ready. She stepped through. The descent was carved. Not drilled, not natural, carved. By tool or by time, she couldn't tell. But each step down the narrow spiral was smooth under her boots, worn in the center like walked often or paced. Tyler came down behind her. They marked the way. Small pieces of bright tape on the wall, every 10 feet, but after a while, the tape stopped sticking. The walls were no longer clay or rock. They were something else. Almost metallic, but not metal. Warm to the touch, quiet to walk against, like the inside of a shell. And still, no echo. Even their breathing sounded close, pressed against them, like the air didn't want their sound to go far. At the bottom, the stairs ended. No door, no wall. Just an opening, a wide mouth, into a chamber that defied geometry. No edges, no light source. Just faint ambient glow from somewhere above, like moonlight filtered through black water. And in that silence, a voice faint, impossible. Lydia, single quotes, April. The sound didn't move through air. It was inside her, like memory, like something planted. She turned in the dark. No one there. Tyler was kneeling near the far side of the chamber, where the floor dipped into a wide basin. He was shining his light at something. April walked slowly to him. It was a shoe, red, hiking boot, waterlogged, torn at the ankle seam, same brand Lydia always wore. And beside it, her journal, the one recovered months ago. but this one was dry. Pages. Curled but not ruined. Tyler opened it. The ink was legible. The entry stopped after 5 pages. On the 6th, in Lydia's unmistakable handwriting, "I'm not alone down here." Next page, "I'm not sure if I ever was." Then, "It keeps the air for itself." April turned her light away from the journal, scanned the edge of the chamber again. The silence pressed in tighter now. The weight of it not just absence. Replaced, and in the farthest edge of the basin, where the light barely touched, something was moving, not walking, not crawling. Something shifting, like something too large to stand up. Straight Tyler saw it too. His hand tightened on the light. Beam fixed, but they didn't run, because the light touched something at the edge, not eyes, not limbs. A wall not built, grown, and across that surface in charcoal, smeared and panicked, one sentence repeated in jagged lines: "They told me not to go down. They told me not to go down. They told me not to go down." Dozens of times. Then one final line carved deeper. "But something else told me to." April reached for her recorder. The battery was dead. Tyler tried his backup. Dead. She pulled her phone, no response. Screen black. The light didn't fail, but it began to dim. Not flicker. Dim, as if something was pulling the brightness out of the air itself, and that's when the sound began. Not from the tunnel. From inside the walls, a low, slow pulse, like something remembering how to breathe. Not mechanical. Not animal rhythmic. She backed toward the entrance, but Tyler didn't follow. He was standing still now. His light dropped on the floor. Face pale. Whispering, she couldn't hear the words. But she recognized the rhythm. He was repeating what Lydia said on the last audio file. "Tell them it's still open. They closed the wrong one." April grabbed his shoulder, shouted his name. He turned, and in his eyes, not fear, recognition, like something had spoken to him too. Tyler was whispering in a cadence, low, steady, not words exactly, not to April, but syllables with weight, as if spoken before, as if remembered. April shook him once. Hard he blinked, staggered, then looked at her like surfacing from deep water. His lips parted, but no sound came. No confusion either. Just something quieter, like reverence, like he'd heard something he believed. They backed away from the basin together. Slow. No words. Just the soft crunch of boots on packed dirt and the low throb still pulsing in the walls. The chamber didn't fight them. Didn't shift or trap. It let them go. And that's what scared her most. Whatever was down there, beneath the ridgeline. Beneath Lydia's last breath, wasn't hunting. It was waiting, and not for prey. For recognition. For contact. The hatch sealed with a muted thunk. No lock, no seal. Just the heavy finality of something designed to be closed only from within. Tyler slumped beside it, hands shaking.
Not fear.
Something else like withdrawal. April didn't speak. She marked the hatch again, not with a scarf this time. The stone. It's a single piece of white quartz placed upright in the moss, sharp edge pointed west. She didn't know why. It just felt required. Back at the motel, she tried every device. Her recorder, Tyler's hard drive. The SD cards they'd stored in foil-wrapped pouches since the first day. All dead files gone. Metadata wiped. Only one thing remained. A file neither of them had recorded, not stored, not named, but it was there on April's backup drive, titled simply L.Monroe_final.wav. She didn't remember placing it, didn't remember transferring anything that day. But the timestamp was exact for 4:44 p.m. The moment they'd left the chamber, she double-clicked. At first, nothing. Then a low tone, not static. Not wind, like pressure across skin. Then Lydia's voice clear, unedited, not a recording, not a way to recording. Journal entry. A message. You won't find a body. Pause. Then, because I'm not what left. Another pause. It takes something. Yes, but not everything. Something stays with you. Her voice wavered, but not from fear, from fatigue. Then tell them we were wrong. It's not a den, it's a mouth. The file ended with silence. No distortion. No fade. Just a quiet as complete as anything she'd ever heard. April didn't sleep. She stayed in the motel bathtub, curtain closed, recorder clutched to her chest like a talisman. She kept expecting her devices to react, to turn off, or blink, or go warm in her hands. They didn't sync all, everything was still. Tyler didn't call. He left that night. A text. Hours later, don't go back. I won't stop you, but don't. She didn't reply. Weeks passed. Snow melted. Spring came to the park. Lydia's name stopped trending. The story faded beneath newer tragedies. Newer disappearances. The ranger station never reopened. And then mid-April, a package arrived. No return address. No stamp. Just left inside April's locked mailbox. Inside, a single object. A strip of cloth. Yellow. Torn. Knotted at the corner. Lydia's scarf, but darker now. Faded around the edges, like it had been worn. Pinned to it a photo. Blurry. Grainy. Shot underground, a tunnel, too wide to be the ridge crawl space. Too clean to be natural. And in the center, distant backlit. Half obscured in the glow of a low red light, a silhouette. A figure standing still, arms by her sides, facing the camera, not waving. Not walking, just waiting. April still hasn't gone back. But she knows she will. Not because she wants to find Lydia, but because Lydia isn't lost. She followed something, and now something is waiting to be followed back.